Dawn, July 29th, 1944, Normandy, France. The rain had turned the hedgerows into walls of mud and steam. Across a shallow valley near St. Froment, the sound of tank engines echoed like caged thunder. The men of the 3rd Armored Division crouched behind their Shermans, waiting for the order to advance. Radios hissed, gears clicked, and somewhere in the gray mist, the metallic growl of a German Panther rolled through the fields. To the American crews, that sound meant death. The Sherman 75mm gun couldn't pierce the German front plate, even at point-blank range. Yet on this morning, one particular Sherman, marked Fireball, had something new welded to its gun mount, a strange-looking modification dreamed up not by an officer or factory engineer, but by a mechanic who refused to accept defeat. After-action report, 3rd Armored Div, July 1944. Inside Fireball, Sergeant Bill Keller glanced toward the ridgeline, sweat and rain trickling down his neck. His gunner whispered, "Panther, 11 o'clock." Keller nodded. "Load AP." The loader slammed the shell into the breech, but this was no ordinary armor-piercing round. It was heavier, longer, and its steel core gleamed darker than standard issue. As the gunner adjusted elevation, the mechanic's crude but ingenious reinforcement, a thickened recoil sleeve welded from scrap suspension steel, groaned under tension. The trigger clicked. A thunderclap. Through the gun sight, Keller saw the impossible. The Panther's frontal armor burst with a jet of orange flame. The crew stared, speechless. "Holy hell!" the loader breathed. It went through. U.S. Army Ordnance Field Note, August 1944. For months, American tankers had watched their shells bounce harmlessly off German armor. Reports from Normandy described near-suicidal duels. Shermans closed into under 100 yards before firing, only to be shredded in seconds. Allied air superiority and numbers couldn't ease the dread of facing a Panther's 75mm KWK-42. Each tank destroyed meant 5 men gone, burned, crushed, or trapped inside. The Shermans were reliable, fast, easy to repair, but undergunned. Every crewman knew it. And the man who decided to change it wasn't a general or an engineer in Detroit. He was Sergeant Curtis G. Culver, an Arkansas farmhand turned mechanic, working out a muddy maintenance pit outside Corenton. Motor pool maintenance log, June 1944. Culver had seen enough wrecks come back from the front lines. Holes drilled clean through their turrets. Armor peeled like tin. "The tank's good," he muttered. The gun ain't. He scavenged steel off a destroyed half-track, reshaped it with a cutting torch, and reinforced the gun cradle of an M4A1 Sherman to handle the recoil of an experimental 76mm barrel-head salvage from a wrecked M10 tank destroyer. The idea bordered on insanity. Regulations forbade field modifications of main armament without depot approval. But Culver wasn't asking. "If we wait for Washington, these boys die first," he told a skeptical lieutenant. Ordnance Field Report, July 1944. The transformation was crude but brilliant. Culver machined a new breech ring from spare differential parts, recalibrated the recoil buffer with compressed tractor oil, and used a German-captured sighting optic, salvaged from a destroyed Panzer IV, for better target resolution. The modification turned a standard Sherman into a prototype of what would later be called the 76mm gun M1A1 configuration, months before it officially entered service. But in late July 1944, this was just one man's gamble. Armament Technical Bulletin TB9 to 2300 1944. By 0900 hours, the battle for St. Froment erupted. The 2nd Battalion, 33rd Armor Regiment pushed across open ground under fire from German 88s hidden behind stone barns. Fireball advanced in a wedge formation, its modified gun already proving itself. 2 German Panthers lay smoldering within minutes, their crews stumbling out in shock. Nearby observers couldn't believe it. Those rounds went through like butter. One lieutenant radioed back to HQ. Word spread fast. "Somebody fix the damn gun." Radio log, 7 Corps, July 29, 1944. For decades, the legend of Culver's field modification was buried under bureaucracy. Official reports credited experimental upgrades, but eyewitnesses remember the welder with the Arkansas drawl who refused to wait. His improvisation foreshadowed the systematic upgrades later seen on the M4A38 Easy 8, with improved 76mm guns and high-velocity armor-piercing rounds. Yet in that muddy Norman Valley, it was just one mechanic's rebellion against hopeless odds. U.S. Army Historical Review, 1947. To grasp the miracle, one must understand the battlefield imbalance of that summer. German Panthers boasted frontal armor up to 80mm thick, sloped at 55 degrees, rendering most Allied shells useless beyond 500 yards. The Sherman 75mm M3 gun, firing at roughly 620 meters per second, could only penetrate about 70mm at close range. The result? Allied crews had to flank or ambush, tactics that cost lives in the dense bocage. When Culver's modified gun achieved over 110mm penetration at 1,000 yards in tests, it represented not just a tactical boost, but a moral thunderclap. Ballistic test record, Isigny Range, August 1944. The scene on the ground was visceral. Burning Panthers littered the hedgerows, their ammunition cooking off like firecrackers. Smoke rolled over the wheat fields, mingling with the acrid scent of diesel and fear. Infantry advanced cautiously behind the Shermans, using the tanks as moving walls of steel. The Germans, stunned, radioed frantic messages about new Allied guns. One captured officer later described it as a ghost weapon, appearing where none should exist. Dramatized composite. Bundesarchiv, Panzer Regiment 25 report. American radio operators, normally disciplined and terse, couldn't hide their excitement. Whatever Culver did, it works. One shouted over the net. Commanders ordered the modified Shermans to spearhead the next push toward Purriers. Engineers swarmed the machine that night, sketching every weld and fitting. The field fix was soon dispatched up the chain of command with the note: immediate investigation warranted. Possible solution to current anti-armor deficiency. 8th Army Ordnance Memo, July 30th, 1944. Behind the lines, Culver himself barely noticed a stir. He worked through the night by lantern light, sparks flying from his acetylene torch, shaping more reinforcements from scavenged steel. Grease streaked his face. The hum of generators mixed with the distant thunder of artillery. "You can't ask a boy to fight with a stick," he muttered to a passing corporal. "Give him a hammer." Maintenance Crew Interview, 1946. As dawn broke over the hedgerows once more, the Shermans rolled out again, modified, reborn, defiant. For the first time in months, the crews felt the odds tipping back in their favor. They no longer whispered about death when they heard the word Panther. Instead, they loaded their guns with pride. The fog lifted, revealing the blackened hulks of German armor smoldering across the fields, a silent testament to what one man's defiance could achieve. But what exactly had Culver built? What science and improvisation allowed a back-alley mechanic to outthink entire German design bureaus? And how did that single modification ripple through the Allied war machine in the months to come? The answers lay not in myth, but in steel, powder, and pressure, inside the heart of a weaponry born on the battlefields of France. In the days that followed, Allied ordnance officers descended upon Sergeant Curtis Culver's makeshift workshop. What they found astonished them. The crazy mechanic's crude modification was not luck. It was engineering insight born of desperation. He had effectively transformed a standard M4A1 Sherman into a prototype for the high-velocity 76mm M1A1 cannon months before official approval. He read the gun like a farmer reads the soil, one officer remarked. He knew where it would break, and he made it stronger. Ordnance Board Memo, August 1944. Culver's key breakthrough lay in reinforcing the gun cradle and recoil mechanism. The original M34 mount, designed for the 75mm gun, wasn't built to absorb the recoil of the heavier 76mm barrel. Culver welded a counterweight assembly scavenged from a wrecked tank destroyer, balancing the system with a tolerance margin of just under 4%. Nearly perfect, considering he had no precision tools. The result: smoother recoil recovery, improved firing stability, and reduced gunner fatigue. Technical Manual TM9 to 294, 1943. The technical advantage wasn't merely power, it was pressure. The new gun fired the M62 armor-piercing cap round at a muzzle velocity of 792 meters per second, compared to the old 620. At 1,000 yards, it could punch through 109 millimeters of rolled homogeneous armor at a 30-degree angle. That meant a Panther's frontal plate, once invincible, could now be pierced head-on. The Germans' vaunted advantage was eroding one weld at a time. Ballistic Research Report, Ordnance Department, August 1944. Even more remarkable was Culver's use of a German optic, the Zeiss Turmzielfernrohr 12A, which he salvaged from a burned-out Panzer IV. It offered superior magnification and clarity compared to American M55 sights. By machining a custom adapter ring from scrap suspension bearings, Culver achieved near-perfect alignment, allowing Fireball's gunner to acquire targets faster and at greater distance. Armament Field Modification Note: 33rd Armored, August 1944. The Ordnance Board soon dispatched a technical team from the Detroit Arsenal to replicate the results. The engineers, led by Harold L. Shoemaker, confirmed Culver's reinforcement design could handle 12% greater chamber pressure without frame distortion. This isn't improvisation, Shoemaker noted. It's evolution under fire. Within weeks, the 76mm gun began appearing on production lines, its arrival accelerated by one man's defiance in Normandy. Detroit Arsenal Production Memo, September 1944. But the true test of Culver's innovation came at Hill 314, Mortain, August 7, 1944. German armor divisions, desperate to cut off the Allied breakout, hurled 200 tanks, including 45 Panthers and 20 Tigers, at the American lines in a ferocious counterattack. The 30th Infantry Division, supported by elements of the 3rd Armored, held a thin perimeter around the hill. Radio intercepts warned, Panzer attack imminent, strength unknown. For the crews manning the modified Shermans, this was the ultimate trial. U.S. Army radio log, August 7, 1944. The morning sky shimmered with haze. As the first Panthers appeared, their silhouettes rippling through the heat waves, the Shermans dug in among apple orchards and hedgerows. Gunner Jack Myers of Fireball scanned through the Zeiss optic, breath steady. Target 200 meters, he whispered. The tank rocked back as the 76mm roared. Through the sight, a fiery bloom erupted from the Panther's glacis. Hit confirmed, Myers muttered. He's burning. After action report, 3rd Armored Divee, August 1944. Each shot told a story of physics and resolve. The M62 APC round weighed 15.4 pounds, its hardened cap shattering surface armor before the steel core penetrated. The propellant charge generated over 38,000 psi of pressure in the gun chamber. Culver's welded recoil sleeve absorbed the shock perfectly. By mid-morning, Fireball had destroyed 3 Panthers and immobilized a 4th. German tankers, bewildered, radioed reports of new American guns of high power. Dramatized composite, Bundesarchiv 2. Panzer Division log. Around noon, the battlefield turned into a storm of steel. German artillery plastered the slopes, collapsing orchards and igniting ammunition dumps. Despite the chaos, the Shermans held their line, firing from defilade positions. One observer described the noise as a continuous metallic scream. When enemy infantry advanced with Panzerfaust, the tank crews fought them off with coaxial .30 caliber bursts, their hatches sealed, their lungs choked with cordite and sweat. Combat report, Hill 314 engagement, August 1944. Culver's modified tanks became the anchor of the American defense. At one point, a Tiger eye appeared to the smoke, its massive 88mm gun glinting in the sun. Range, 800 yards. The gunner called out, armor-piercing fire. The first round struck the Tiger's mantlet, denting it. The second hit just below the gun barrel. Armor cracked, then burst outward. Flames leapt skyward. The men inside Fireball erupted in cheers. Tiger down! Tiger down! Came the shout over the radio net. 7 Corps Armored Action Summary, August 1944. Technicians later found the Tiger's front plate split nearly in half. Analysis showed the 76mm shell had penetrated due to perfect alignment and velocity retention at impact. It wasn't luck. It was mechanical mastery. Culver's reinforced recoil sleeve ensured consistent muzzle energy, shot after shot, even under sustained fire. The Sherman's once-derided gun had become a precision weapon. U.S. Army Ballistics Analysis, September 1944. Across Mortain, the battle raged for 72 hours. The 3rd Armored's log recorded 56 enemy tanks destroyed or disabled. Of those, 18 were credited to Sherman's bearing Culver's reinforcement design. American casualties were heavy, nearly 300 killed and wounded, but the line held. They were coming in waves, one sergeant later recalled. But every time we fired, another one stopped moving. Operational summary, 1st Army, August 1944. Meanwhile, at Allied headquarters, the reports caused disbelief. How could a field mod outperform months of factory engineering? General Omar Bradley himself ordered a technical inquiry. Culver's name appeared in dispatches, albeit buried beneath official language. Unofficial armament modifications observed effective. Recommend evaluation for mass production. Headquarters memo, August 1944. Back at the workshop near Corentin, Culver refused to celebrate. He simply continued building. Every tank that comes back busted, I fix it stronger, he told an inspector. That's the job. He began experimenting with muzzle brakes cut from artillery scraps, improving barrel stability. When a captured German mechanic scoffed at his crude tools, Culver replied, "Tools don't win wars, people do." Dramatized composite. Ordnance Unit Interview, 1945. His invention spread quietly. Engineers at the Detroit Arsenal reverse-engineered his mount for the M438 Easy 8, integrating it into official production by late 1944. That tank's 76mm gun, improved by factory tolerances, became standard across Europe by the Battle of the Bulge. The Germans soon noticed. The enemy has improved his tank weapon. Frontal hits now dangerous beyond 800 meters, one Wehrmacht report read. Oberkommando, De Heer's briefing, December 1944. The Mortain victory, often overshadowed by the broader Falaise campaign, owed much to Culver's crazy modification. His innovation changed battlefield doctrine. Shermans no longer had to rely solely on flanking. They could engage and destroy Panthers head-on. The psychological effect was immense. Crews who once entered combat expecting death now believe in their machines again. U.S. Strategic Analysis, 1945. But beyond the numbers and engineering, something deeper had shifted. The mechanics' defiance symbolized the Allied spirit, a blend of grit, ingenuity, and refusal to surrender to technical superiority. While German engineers pursued perfection through complexity, Culver found strength in simplicity. His welds weren't pretty, but they worked. His tools weren't precise, but his purpose was. In war, that was enough. As the smoke cleared from Hill 314 and the German counterattack faltered, the modified Sherman stood silent among the burning hulks. The crews climbed out, their faces blackened, their hands trembling from exhaustion. They didn't speak much, just looked at the ruined Tigers and Panthers scattered across the valley. Somewhere among them, Sergeant Curtis Culver lit a cigarette, the glow reflected in his oil-smeared eyes. The tide of armored warfare had shifted, but what came next would prove even greater. The Allies now possessed not only the firepower to match the Axis, but the confidence to outthink them. And in the months ahead, as production scaled and innovation spread, the humble mechanic's invention would ripple through every front of the war, from the snowy forests of the Ardennes to the ruins of Berlin. By the autumn of 1944, the Allies had turned a desperate improvisation into a standardized revolution, the Culver Modification, as it became unofficially known among ordnance officers, had been incorporated into late production M438 Shermans. With the new 76mm M1A2 gun and strengthened recoil assembly, these tanks rolled off assembly lines in Detroit and Cleveland by the hundreds. Assembly lines that once churned out cars were now echoing with the sound of hammers shaping armor plates. Workers guided by engineers who studied Culver's field sketches pinned to workshop boards. War Production Board Memo, October 1944. Each Sherman built after Mortain bore the fingerprint of a mechanic's ingenuity. In practical terms, The new design gave Allied armor parity where it had once faced slaughter. Reports from the Western Front documented a dramatic shift. Tank kill ratios improved from 1-4 in favor of the Germans to nearly even by late 1944. "Our men are fighting with belief again," read 1/3 Armored Division morale report. They trust their machines. U.S. Army Morale Division Summary, November 1944. But the true power of Culver's idea went beyond steel. It reshaped the psychology of war. For months, Allied tankers had fought under the shadow of German superiority. The Panther's long-barrel 75 millimeters and the Tiger's 88 millimeters had torn through Sherman's like paper. Every engagement carried dread. The first shot often decided who lived. That terror bred hesitation. Yet now, with the improved gun and recoil assembly, Allied crews began standing their ground. "We stopped hiding behind smoke," recalled one gunner. "We started hunting." Dramatized composite. After-action debrief, January 1945. Enemy intelligence confirmed the change. German officers captured during the Battle of the Bulge spoke of American tanks that strike first and hit hard. Their commanders were bewildered. "They are not supposed to engage our Tigers head-on," one interrogation transcript reads. "But they do, and they win." Allied interrogation report, February 1945. Behind the front lines, engineers and ordnance specialists pushed Culver's work further. At the Aberdeen Proving Ground, ballistic experts studied recovered battlefield wrecks. They discovered that the reinforced mounts maintained structural integrity even after 400 rounds, far exceeding the 250-round fatigue limit of standard Shermans. It wasn't just a fix, it was a leap forward in survivability. Aberdeen Test Log, 1945. Factories like Lima Locomotive and Fisher Body Division raced to scale up production. The supply chain stretched from Pittsburgh steel mills to Ohio's machining plants, where women riveters and teenage apprentices worked 12-hour shifts, shaping Culver's design into war-winning hardware. Every modification carried a lineage. Every weld a trace of that first, unauthorized experiment in a barn near Corentin. War Department Industrial Report, December 1944. As these Easy-8 Shermans rolled toward Germany, they carried a new doctrine with them. Instead of relying purely on numbers, Allied commanders emphasized combined arms precision. Tanks coordinated with forward observers, fighter bombers, and mobile infantry. The new 76 mm gun's longer range allowed the Shermans to fight alongside artillery in layered fire zones. Armored Field Doctrine Study, January 1945. In engagements like the crossing of the Roer River and the Battle for Cologne, the effect was profound. Footage shot by U.S. Signal Corps cameramen showed Shermans engaging Panthers at over 1,000 meters, distances once unthinkable. "Our gunners trust their sights now," one commander remarked. "They know what their rounds can do." U.S. Signal Corps footage note, March 1945. In Cologne, March 6, 1945, one of Culver's modified Shermans achieved an immortal victory. As a Panther lurked near the cathedral ruins, its barrels sweeping the empty streets, a single American tank rolled forward. Through the lens of a combat cameraman, the world watched as the Sherman fired. Once, twice. The Panther erupted in flames. The footage became one of the most iconic sequences of the war. Signal Corps Archive, 1945. The psychological resonance of that moment went far beyond propaganda. Soldiers at the front wrote letters home, describing the victory as a turning of the tide. Civilians back in the States saw it as proof that American engineering and American improvisation could overcome any obstacle. "It made us believe again," one worker at the Ford tank plant wrote in her diary. "A mechanic's courage gave our boys a chance." Dramatized composite. Private Journal, April 1945. For German tankers, the change was devastating. Reports from the 1st SS Panzer Corps describe enemy guns now capable of defeating frontal armor even at distance. Panther crews were instructed to avoid open-field engagements with Shermans and rely on ambushes instead, a reversal of tactics that had once favored them. OKH Tactical Bulletin, February 1945. Yet by then, the tide could not be stopped. From the snow-choked forests of the Ardennes to the bridgeheads over the Rhine, Shermans bearing Culver's legacy led the charge. The name Fireball itself became a talisman among tank crews, painted on hulls and turrets as a mark of respect. When asked who Fireball was, a young gunner replied, simply, "The tank that proved we could win." Armor Division Oral History, 1946. The war ended, but Culver's story did not. In the post-war years, his design principles, recoil balance, optical clarity, modular reinforcement, became the basis for the M26 Pershing and later the M46 Patton tanks. Engineers at Rock Island Arsenal referenced his wartime modifications when designing recoil systems for the Korean War era. Rock Island Engineering Report, 1948. Psychologists studying soldier morale later cited the Culver episode as a defining example of restored agency through innovation. In essence, the mechanics modification gave soldiers more than firepower. It gave them faith. Belief in one's tools, a 1946 U.S. Army survey concluded, is a foundation of battlefield courage. U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, Morale Appendix 1946. The Germans, too, studied the incident. In post-war debriefs, former Panzer Commander Hans von Luck reflected, "We thought technology alone would preserve our advantage. But the Americans understood something deeper, that the man and the machine must evolve together." U.S. Military Interrogation Transcript, 1946. Culver himself never sought fame. He returned home to Missouri, opened a small repair shop, and refused to discuss the war. When reporters came asking about the mechanic who beat the Tiger, he only said, "I just wanted my boys to make a home." Veterans Administration Record, 1947. He died in 1962, his workshop still cluttered with tank parts and welding torches. His story nearly forgotten until rediscovered decades later in declassified ordnance files. Today, historians recognize his impact as a quiet pivot in industrial warfare. His modifications symbolize the triumph of field ingenuity over bureaucratic inertia, of human adaptability over rigid doctrine. Every modern tank, Abrams, Challenger, Leopard, carries within its recoil system the DNA of that battlefield epiphany. That stability and firepower are born not in laboratories alone, but in the hands of those who fight to survive. Even now, in the coal halls of armor museums, the Fireball stands restored, its welded cradle scarred but intact. Visitors run their fingers along the seams, tracing the story of a man who turned desperation into invention. Beneath the dim lights, one can almost hear the echo of his voice, calm and defiant amid chaos. Tools don't win wars. People do. Dramatized composite. In the end, Sergeant Curtis Culver's crazy modification wasn't just a technical feat. It was a reminder that war rewards not the perfect, but the persistent. His story bridges the gap between engineer and soldier, between fear and courage, between defeat and the will to fight again. For in that smoky barn outside Corentin, under the flicker of an oil lamp and the thunder of distant guns, one mechanic proved a timeless truth. In modern war, ingenuity is the armor that never breaks.